on the banks of the Great River, high above the Elora Gorge. This is the Buzzr Podcast. Indie music, new releases, industry insiders, out-of-the-box conversations with guests from the true north, from the West Coast to the East Coast, to across the pond, and from down under. And now, here is Shay.
Hey, Shay here, On Air Indie. Welcome and enjoy episode 14. First, Music History Boiled Down for February 18. Collecting the Brit Awards for Outstanding Contribution to Music, Freddie Mercury made his final public appearance on stage when he joined the rest of Queen in 1990 at the Dominion Theatre, London, England. Celebrating Cake Day, Yoko Ono, wife of the late John Lennon. She turns 88 today. Canadian legend Robbie Bachman from BTO turns 68. And joining them is John Travolta of Grease and Saturday Night Fever fame, turning 67. Montreal folk artist Sweet Roger is with us today. His 2017 debut album, You'll Always Have Yourself, saw the track Loon Lake earn a nomination in the Toronto Independent Music Awards for Best Folk Roots Song. Sweet Roger's second album releases this year. We will chat and hear the first track, Pay Me, and his January release, Comeback. His new material is edgy and provocative, with that audible swagger, both scrappy and sympathetic. Thank you, Sweet Roger, for joining our podcast.
My pleasure.
So what's it like in Montreal right now?
It's cold and wintry, that's for sure.
Well, you gotta love the winter if you're in Montreal.
Yeah, I do.
The music you put out, they tell stories, and you must have a release that has been most impactful.
Yeah, I think. The album, the debut album, is pretty impactful. I mean, I think if I had to choose a song off there that I really thought was sort of telling about how I feel about things, I think it's "Goodbye World." It's a very nostalgic kind of piece. I'm one that's very romantic, and I love history, and then that song really sort of says it all.
Is that the favorite song from the album for you?
I don't know if it's the favorite one, but it's just definitely we definitely finished the album with that song. We thought it was a good outro piece. But it's just one that just comes to mind when people say, what's sort of, at the crux of your work. I feel like that one really hit home.
Well, one of the releases from that album, Loon Lake, earned a nomination for the Toronto Independent Music Awards. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was up at a cottage, and I had this guitar riff for a while, and I didn't know what to do with it. It was just sometimes you get a musical piece going, but you're struggling to find lyrics. And there was just something about this guitar, lick that I had going that I really liked. I kept coming back to it. And I was up at this cottage, and it was evening, and had the fire going. And all of a sudden we could hear all these loons calling, but they were calling from one lake to another. You could hear it in the distance. One would call, and then one would call from a little bit further away, and then even further than that after that. And it was just this kind of sublime moment. You're sort of feeling one with your surroundings, but also very distant from it as well. And so it's a kind of mystical song. But it was one that I kind of felt went really well with the guitar. The guitar kind of punches really, like a heartbeat almost. And this song gets to the heart of that as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say it does that. Mm-hmm. It's a great song. That debut album had a great blend of different genres and influences. Like one of the tracks, Put Out the Fires, is that a homage to alternative music that you grew up with?
Yeah, so when I grew up in the 90s, and I listened to a lot of alternative music. I mean, I guess I was there when alternative grunge era kind of, came into being. And, when like a lot of teenagers, it really resonated with me. And I hadn't really written a song that, that felt like that kind of era in a while. So Put Out the Fires was my sort of tribute to that time in my life and that time of music. And the 90s I think, was a really special time for a lot of art at the time. And I think music wise, I still think it's, influences a lot of people. And it was a nice bridge from, going from the 60s Hendrix, experimental music era, and then, this leading up into the 2000s with a lot of different alternative indie bands coming. I think it's a good sort of bridge.
Oh, it's a great track, and it is a great bridge. You also have more folk-inspired songs on the track, such as Conditions.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the route I've been going through lately. So there's definitely a lot of that on the album. The title track, You'll Always Have Yourself, and Conditions, and even Goodbye World are very folky kind of songs. Lots of acoustic instruments, and having a little bit of that raw, more, gritty energy to them. It's definitely something that I've always loved all my life. I love the sound of acoustic instruments, and I've always loved folk music for that as well. And so that, it's definitely been something that's been, taking more and more of my interest and love for music.
So would you expect fans to have that in your upcoming releases?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely with the single, you're going to see a lot more of, a roots feel to the music, and a lot more grittier acoustic sounds as well. I've been listening to a lot of stuff that that came out in the 30s and 40s, and the technology back then was ancient compared to what we have today. But I think there's something about them that, because of that kind of lo-fi, low quality, that somehow they have even more impact. They have even more meaning to us now. And it's something I've been diving into quite a bit.
So how did you get into music? Like, what started you?
What started it? My older brother, he started off playing guitar, and he and his friend, who, eventually I befriended him as well. They were rehearsing a lot around the house, and they were playing songs together. And one day I overheard them playing In My Life by the Beatles. And they were playing together, harmonizing together, and it just sounded incredible. And I felt so inspired, and I had to do it. And there's just some things like you experience, and you're like, oh, that's amazing, but I'm not going to do that. You don't feel compelled to do it, or you don't feel like you can do it. But watching them play guitar and listening to them play guitar, I knew that I wanted to do it, and I also knew that I could do it. I just went head in, and like anybody will tell you, like, learning an instrument at first is really tough, and it's tough going. It's long before you ever get to do something that you really want to do. But I just knew it was going to happen eventually, and I'm glad I went for it.
So the music that you grew up with, did that influence your sound today?
It definitely did. I mean, one thing I find about a lot of the alternative grunge era music from the 90s is that it does actually resonate a lot with the 30s and music that came out of the 30s and 40s in a way. There was all of a sudden this disdain for the norm, challenges to authority. There was, all of a sudden there, in contrast to the pop music from the 80s, alternative music had a less angry approach than punk, I think, but a more kind of emotional angst that still resonates with me today. It's not angry and belligerent, although I like that too sometimes, but it has a kind of more of an emotional, almost mystical way of looking at this problematic world that we live in. And I think that it still resonates with me today. Yeah. And I think there is that kind of link to the past that still kind of resonates too. I mean, if you think about Nirvana, like they did that Unplugged album in the 90s. It was one of my favorite albums, still is today. And they finish it with, Where Did You Sleep Last Night? And I don't think it's a coincidence that music resonated with them, from Leadbelly, that song.
So your influences on the blues side, where did that come from?
My father loved the blues. It's funny, when I was growing up, I was, a teenager. And so, you always just rebel to what your parents do. So I was blasting, REM and Nirvana and Eric's Trip. And, he was listening to B.B. King and Buddy Guy and Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I liked them, but I just didn't want to admit it back then. So it started from when I was growing up too. We listened to a lot of blues around the house, and I like the Stones, and they're quite rooted in the blues as well. So it's always sort of been there with me along the way.
So do your live performances differ from the music you put out from the studio?
I've been doing a lot more solo performances, so in that way they do. That's another reason why the upcoming album is going to it'll probably approximate more the shows I've been doing, since it's been small collaborations and less orchestrated shows, just because it's tough to tour and organize, band rehearsals and stuff like that. So to do shows more on a solo basis or small collaborations has been a lot easier, but it's also just made it more intimate. And I like the intimate settings that I've been playing in, small cafes and small venues. Interestingly enough, in Montreal, it's known to be quite a big music scene, but we're losing a lot of the venues that I've played with in the last decade. I can think of Divan Orange and Inspector Epingle and Le KGB. Like, we've lost all three of those, which were major kind of venues for a while, and we've lost them in the last, I think, 5 years. So it's been more. I wouldn't say it's hard getting shows now, but it's just it's a little bit more difficult than it was in the past.
Well, change does that.
Sorry?
Change does that, and definitely the pandemic has had a lot of artists and venues, anybody who's in the music making business, have to rethink their strategies on that. Yeah,
I mean, and shortly before the pandemic, what I've been more exposed to is more roots organized venues like house shows. I did a couple of East, and they were really fun. I mean, it's really, I feel like you're making more of an impact going to perform at a house show than you are going to a venue where people are kind of they're there to drink and socialize, and they're not necessarily there for the music. The music is a nice sort of like cherry on top, but a lot of these house shows, that's precisely what people were doing. Another good one that I did was So Far Sounds, which is a great organization that puts together these pop-up shows all over the world and in different cities. And if you're a member, you sign up and you show up, and you don't even know what the artists are. You don't know who's playing and what kind of music it is. But you go to discover, and you're there for that. And that was another great show. Live streaming has been kind of interesting as well. I mean, I've watched a lot of cool live streams and done a couple myself, and they're anything from like doing it inside a studio to someone at their kitchen table, and it's been kind of interesting to see that, see where songs get before they've been recorded and orchestrated and choreographed. They started usually in the kitchen, you know what I mean, at a table somewhere or in a bedroom, and so it's nice to see music played from where it originates.
So the Pay Me actually reminds me a lot of Neil Young of influence. It's a very surly blues folk song. And I've read that you also like history. And a lot of your stories have a historic vibe to it. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always an element of history, I think, in a lot of my music, especially the lyrics. Pay Me for sure. It's definitely, it's got that old rootsy kind of folk feeling to it. And I was listening to a lot of Mississippi John Hurt at the time when I wrote it. And in one song in particular, Spike Driver Blues, was definitely in my mind, and I was learning how to play it and working on Travis picking and stuff like that. And and I just like the lyrics, and the Pay Me is it's about surviving in a world where there's just labor and money involved, and you have to sort of scrounge around, and people do all kinds of things for money and in order to survive and make it in this world. And Pay Me has a lot to do with that. And we've been doing that forever. I mean, I don't know how long we've been going on, working for wages and money. And it's definitely something that's always been a concern of mine.
Well, working man blues is definitely something that speaks to a lot of people. And you developed that whole concept from a photograph at a flea market?
Yeah. So I was, traveling, and I was in LA at the time, and I went to this flea market, and I bought this photograph, like in this large print for like $20. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is incredible. I love the imagery. For those listening, it's simply just somebody, it's a black and white photo, and it's a man leaning up against a dead tree. He's a tree cutter. That's what he does for a living. And he's sitting there counting the money he's just been paid. And he's got this kind of interesting, smile on his face. Like some people are obsessed with the Mona Lisa smile and what's behind it. I thought this was very similar. There's a lot of a lot of interpretation there that you can dive into. It was just a very compelling image, and it's what inspired the story behind the song.
And you recorded it and engineered that during lockdown?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started doing a demo for this song shortly before the lockdown, and as soon as we were shut down and there was nothing going on, and everyone had a lot of time on their hands, walking and cooking and baking, I was like, I should also maybe record some music. The demo I had done I really liked, and so I decided to re-record it in the same fashion, and just try to tighten it up a bit. But I also wanted to make it a bit raw and give it a feeling of impulsiveness. You know what I mean? You listen to a lot of recordings before 1960, and they're loaded with problems, and they're not perfect, and the playing it feels more spontaneous and live. So I wanted to have that feeling when I did it. So I focused on single takes and not trying to patch up things, and not trying to EQ it too much, and not trying to compress things, trying to make it sound good so it still stands up to today standards, but at the same time I wanted to have an old-timey feel as well.
Well, that's awesome. Listeners, we're going to hear Pay Me right now.
Got a dead tree stuck inside the ground. Want me to cut it free? Even when you pay me, I'll come. Even when you pay me, I'll come. Got a dollhouse at the end of a long street. Want no one looking in. even when something comes right, even when something goes down. It all comes right, honey, everything goes down. All them roots, they grow deeper, deeper than we know. I wanna tell you it gets easier the further they grow. You pay me and I'll come. You got a dead tree stuck inside the ground. Want me to cut it free? Even when you pay me, I'd come. Even when you pay me, I'd come. Oh, I'll come round, honey, everything comes down. All them roots, they grow deeper, deeper than we know. I wanna tell you it gets easier the further they grow. You pay me and I'll come. You pay me and I'll come. Now come.
Hey, that was a great song, very raw vocals. Did you do that intentionally?
Yeah. I mean, I try to, avoid the all the things you're supposed to do as a singer, like warm up, and I wanted it to sound like I just got off a freight train or something. You know what I mean? Or I'm sitting around a campfire from walking all day. I wanted to have that feel, that gritty kind of feel, that vulnerable kind of way of singing that a lot of old timey singers have and are characteristic of.
Well, how does a cash feel to me?
Yeah, I mean, I did like a lot of these songs. Somebody told me, it was a great quote. These old songs that we listen to now, that was the dance music for people back then. So the use of Travis picking is it gets that great 2/4 bass feeling going, and it really just makes you want to stamp your foot. You know what I mean? Like it really gets that natural way of drawing you into the song.
And will the new album that includes Pay Me and the next track that we're going to hear, Come Back, will that new album show a different type of music?
I definitely, I like to make sure that there's a variety on an album. I feel like there should be some continuity from one track to the next, but I feel like you do, especially if you want to listen to an album from front to back, you want a little bit of variety in there. And so there's going to be some songs that are going to be a little bit more on the folksy side, and other songs that are going to be on the bluesy side. I want to, make sure that there's different emotions there as well. Some things are going to leave you feeling charged, and other ones are going to, maybe leave you feeling a little bit more pensive. So I definitely want to, create a kind of kinetic energy. Yeah.
So tell us about Comeback.
Comeback was a song that again, I always usually just start with a guitar, piece first, and then, think, rely on what that kind of inspires emotionally, and then go from there. But I guess I was just reading a lot of the news in this time, like a lot of other people, and, maybe getting a little bit too far into the news sometimes it's not a great thing. But, I think the basic premise of this song is, how do you, remain a good person, remain true to what you want to be, in a bad environment, in a bad world. And the song kind of has 3 verses, and it all, comes back to the same thing. How can I deal with this problem, but still come back to being the person that I want to be? The first part sort of deals with a corrupt world and a corrupt person. And, some theorists say that the only way to deal with these people is to stoop to their level, to be as violent as they are, to be as, belligerent. But how do you do that and then still come back to being who you are? And the next part is more about labor, and, he's debating whether or not he should get on a bus and go do this job. And, they're promising all kinds of things, but, he's got his doubts. And then the last one is about, immigration and migration and going other places, and, the trials that it sets for people, and the dangers that it sets for people. And it's unfortunately ends on a little bit of a dark note.
Wow, sounds like an incredible album that's coming out.
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm enjoying it. I'm inspired. It's not all doom and gloom for like the way you hear it in Comeback. There's definitely some more romantic and I guess punchier tunes that like Pay Me, that give you a little bit of a good vibe going. But there's going to be some dark stuff there too.
I look forward to it.
Oh, great!
So now we're going to listen to Comeback.
Darling, there's a bad man in our neighborhood, and I feel I gotta go out and show him what evil is. But if I do, I don't know if I can love you like you want me to. If I kill a man, I don't know if I'm ever coming back to you. I wanna come back, I wanna come back, I'll come back to you. And I wanna come back, I wanna come back, I'll come back to you. Oh, I'm on my last rope and I don't know what to do. They keep promising me things I know they'll never do. Well, sure, it looks like heaven, but baby, it's hell for sure. If I get on that bus, I don't know if I'll ever come back to you. I wanna come back, I wanna come back to you. I wanna come back, I wanna come back, I'll come back to you. It's cold and it's dark out here. My arm won't let me go, and I'm snarling with fear. The sky opened up on me and cut me right to the bone. And I know what I promised you, baby, but I ain't coming home. But I wanna come back, I wanna come back, I wanna come back to you. I wanna come back, I wanna come back, I'll come back to you.
So do you collaborate with other people?
I have it in the past, and I've worked with on the debut album. I collaborated with my friend Paul, who's the producer on the album, and he was the head engineer. He works. He has his own company called Houdini Records, and Paul Edwards. And he put a band together of people that he thought would mix well with me. And we had Dave Fenwick on the guitar, and Stephen Clifford on bass, and Wade Manricks on drums. And we got Al Easler, who was a colleague at the time of Paul's, who did the mixing and assisted on the engineering and did some music as well. And it was great. It was a fantastic collaboration there. And I've also worked with Stephanie Parnell, who's a fantastic singer and songwriter here from Montreal, and hope to work with her again. I'm hoping to do a couple of recordings with her, which would be great. So definitely collaborated with people in the past, and I'm looking forward to doing more collaborations. This has been fun to do a great solo project like nobody. It's basically me recording everything and making all the decisions, and it's been great. It's been fun to challenge myself in that way, but I'm looking forward to working with another producer again and working with other artists. It's always something something wonderful to be inspired by other people and be challenged by other people.
So do you have other future projects other than this upcoming album?
Definitely want to work on video. That'll be songs from the album, but live sort of performances of them, and then hopefully do some touring if anything ever gets back to normal. Hopefully things get back to normal soon. And then eventually I definitely want to. I've already got some songs in the works that I think will be better suited to a more band setting, and get into something that's, again, going back to those alternative roots that are always there with me from the 90s. Yeah.
So where do you normally tour?
Mainly in Quebec and Ontario and in the Maritimes. But hopefully getting out west would be a great addition, and then Europe as well.
Do you do a lot of festivals?
Yeah, I've done Canadian Music Week. I've done Pop Montreal. I've done what's the other one? NXNE. Yeah.
What do you prefer, the bigger venues or the smaller?
I guess I like the smaller ones. You know what I mean? I've played for a huge crowd, and it's great, but it's thrilling. Like, don't get me wrong, it's really thrilling when you get this massive crowd and you can hear cheers, and it's really invigorating. But there's just something about an intimate show that where you really see everyone's face, individual faces, and you can see them reacting to your performance. I think that's always been the best joy for me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the speakeasy and the quiet and dim lights and all that.
Yeah.
I love it. You can't beat it. You can't beat it.
I agree.
Before we go, Sweet Roger, can you tell us where to find your music?
Absolutely. You can find it at my website, sweetroger.com. And you can also just find it on basically every streaming service that's out there. Spotify, Apple, there's Deezer, YouTube Music, everything. You can also go to Bandcamp. Bandcamp's a good option, especially if you want to buy the music. They often do, they're a great organization that often helps out artists by, waiving their service fees sometimes, so that the artist gets all the money that people pay. But yeah, basically anywhere.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that channel.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sweet Roger, for joining the Buzzr today. It was pleasure. A great chat. I love getting to know you better.
Yeah.
Listeners, take a listen for the releases that have come out. Pay Me and Come Back, and look for the album that is coming out in the year. And from what I remember, it's still untitled.
Yeah, I think we're going to be going with the title track "Pay Me." Yeah.
All right.
We're looking.
I like that name.
Yeah, exactly. I think we'll be coming out end of April 30th.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I'd love to have you back on the show for that.
Perfect. Love
okay, great. Well, have a good one, Roger.
Yeah, you take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, thank y'all for tuning in. Next episode is February 19. The Smoke Wagon Blues Band out of Hamilton, Ontario, joins our next episode. The band took home Recording of the Year in the Maple Blues Awards for their album, The Ballad of Albert Johnson. They are up for New Artist of the Year and Horn Player of the Year. The band is a crowd favorite since forming in 1996. They receive international radio play and have so many accolades to shout out, yet honestly, there are too many to mention in a short intro. Don't miss this great Canadian R&B band. Their music can really kick you up a notch. Such talent in one band. You're going to love the episode. So catch you at the pod on February 19. On Air Indie. From my pad to yours over the airwaves. Subscribe fees are at thebuzzrpod.com. Cheers.